Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We're going to be doing another watercolor Christmas card this week, and this week we're going to be doing another collection of holiday botanicals. The last holiday botanical collection we did was snowberry, cedar, pine, and holly. And this week I'm going to show you how to do juniper, fir, sage, and rose hips. So if you're interested in learning how to paint these in watercolor, then keep on watching. I'm starting off by painting the juniper, and I'm using just a brown mix of gray and burnt sienna for the stem. And then I'm going to go ahead with the same brush and create some sort of secondary stems coming off the main stem. And just using the tip of my brush, and I think this is a number 4 round brush. You can use any kind of round brush with a nice fine point. And then what I'm going to do is come in with a green to paint the needle. I'm using the same number 4 round brush, and I'm just making light little flicks with the tip of the brush to create some short needles. And juniper needles are shorter with a more of a pointed tip. And I'm using a lighter green and darker green as usual, so I can get some lighter and paler areas of the needles for contrast. And I'm just going along and creating the needles on each of the secondary branches, and then adding just a few to the main stem between those branches as well. Now I'm starting on painting the berries, and I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue and Payne's gray for a dark blue berry, and they're quite small little berries, and I'm just doing a circle and leaving a blank space for the highlight on the berry, and again making sure some berries are darker and some are paler. And I'm just doing little clusters along the center of the stem, which is sort of the growing pattern for berries on juniper. Now I've switched to a smaller brush. This is my number 1 brush, just because it was it gives me a little bit more control for this small little area that I'm painting. And so yeah, I'm just going around seeing where I could fill in some space with the berry clusters, and then you're pretty much done. Now I'm starting on the sage, and I'm using a lighter minty green to paint the sage. I added a little bit of cobalt green to my sap green to create this color. And I started with just drawing the center stem, and then I'm just using the shape of my brush to make very, very simple leaf shapes. And once again, I've made sure that I have some lighter colored leaves and darker leaves, and then I took my smaller brush and created a center vein down each leaf. And with that smaller brush, I picked up a darker mix of green, and now I'm just darkening the areas where the little stems meet the leaves, and also where there's some overlaps on the main stem, and this will just give a little bit more definition. Now I am moving on to the rose hips. So I'm starting off with doing the main stem, which I'm just using a mix of sap green and a little bit of ultramarine or a little bit of olive green, depending if I want the lighter or darker color. So the rosehip is a main stem with two stems of leaves coming off the side. So I'm starting with one of the leaves, which they come in sort of sets of 5, two stacks on the side and then a terminal leaf. So I'm just working on that, and again wanting to make some of these leaves darker, some of them lighter. I usually make mine lighter by dipping my brush in clean water and dabbing it on the paper towel just to take a little bit of paint off the brush. And then I'm going along just creating that very simple leaf shape. Now that I have the leaves in place, I'm starting on the rose hips, and I'm just using a mix of Winsor red for the rose hips. It's a nice sort of even red color. And I'm just creating ovals and leaving a white space for the highlight. These are really simple rose hips, no blending required, and it's just wet on dry paint and just leaving that little highlight and tidying up the edges and making my oval a little bit more round if I need to. Now I've rinsed my brush and have a paler concentration of paint, so I'm creating more rose hips but just paler so that I get that nice contrast. Now I'm just using a pale mix of the same brown I used for the juniper stem, and I'm just creating some little wiggly marks coming off the rose hips, which represent the dried sepal. And again, you can just use the tip of your brush, press down and lift up, and make sort of some curvy markings with this technique to represent the sepals. Now I'm just taking a darker concentration of red with a bit of alizarin crimson, and I am just darkening the area of the rose hip below where the sepal connects to indicate a bit of shadow. And you can just leave it like that or rinse your brush and blend it with a bit of clean water, whichever you would like. And I'm switching to a smaller brush now, and I decided I'll add a little bit more definition to the rose hips, and I'm going to just add that same darker red to the rose hips on the bottom side to create a bit more contrast and shadow. Now I am adding the veins to the leaves and just using my small number 1 brush again, just a center vein and then a few light little strokes off the side for the secondary veins. Now I am starting on the fur, and I'm using the same brown I used for the juniper stem and creating a few stems off the side, and I sometimes push down a little harder on the bottom to make the bottom part of the stem thicker. Now I am using a darker green, which is perylene green, to create the needles, and they're a little bit longer than the juniper needles, not as long as pine needles, and I'm just making irregular thin little strokes with my brush. You do want some of them to overlap each other. There's quite a lot of needles on fur, so make it nice and thick. Now I finished adding the needles to the stems that I mapped in, and I realized I would like to fill it in a bit more, so I just used the same green, created a few more smaller branches off the side to fill that in and make it look a little bit fuller. Now I am taking a darker concentration of the perylene green with my smaller #1 brush and just creating a bit of contrast on some of the stems and where the needles are thicker, and just sort of darkening the areas that I want to stand out a bit more. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for a new video every Wednesday. And if you're interested in learning more about watercolor painting and botanicals, then you can check out my online school. And you can get more information on the school at lauraashton.ca.